look into your pet's eyes, what do you see? A reflection of yourself? A glimpse into a world untamed by human expectations? Or perhaps just a creature sharing the same space, navigating this chaotic world alongside you? Welcome to the Companions Collective, where we dig into the human-animal bond and uncover the messy, beautiful reality of it all. I'm Angela Schneider, your guide through the depths of our shared connection with our companion animals. Join me as we explore the tangled web of love, loss, and everything in between that defines our relationships with the creatures who know us best. Today is a throwback to this podcast's roots in the grief we endure when our best fur friends die. My good friend Beth Bigler and I had this chat before I decided to rebrand the pod and expand the subject matter beyond that niche. As I continued to study grief, it struck me that a number of folks out there might not seek professional help with their grief for their pet. We exist in a world where our sorrow is called disenfranchised grief, in which our loss is not necessarily accepted, respected, and acknowledged by some people in our lives and the world at large. Because it's just a pet, right? We know better. And Beth helps dispense the notion that it's just too darn silly or shameful to seek professional help. After all, grief is grief. Welcome back for number 4, Beth Bigler.
Woohoo! Ready to go.
You are one step closer to another jacket.
So excited. Cannot wait for the jacket. What is the jacket even going to look like? Can we have people submit suggestions?
Ooh, that could happen. I know it's going to be orange.
100%.
Yes, everything in my life is orange. So what we're going to talk about today is relevant to the idea of disenfranchised grief. We know, well, you know what? A lot of people might actually not know that there are counselors like yourself who are dedicated to helping us on this journey of pet loss. But I wonder that a lot of people might be sitting at home thinking, well, that's stupid. Is there a stigma attached not just to pet loss, but also to seeking help around pet loss?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why people don't reach out for support, whether it's a mental health professional, whether it's a support group, whether it's a family member or friend. And there's a lot of reasons. I think stigma can be one of them. I think with pet loss grief, there's a lot of stigma, like it's just a dog or only a cat or just a bunny rabbit. And I think we have all internalized a bit of that, even if we don't believe it's true. So I think that is part of an external stigma problem, but I think there's a lot of internal stigma that says I ought to be able to figure this out myself, or I should, my least favorite word, I should be able to get through this, or I've had a lot of other grief and loss. This ought to be like those others where I found a way. So as much stigma as I think is placed outside, externally, I think we have a lot of internal stigma as well. And I also think, frankly, a lot of people do try to find some support and it doesn't go well. And it doesn't go well for a whole host of reasons. And sometimes when you reach out in ways large or small and it doesn't go well, you feel like giving up because you feel like maybe it's me. And this is a very common story for me. Many times people come to me after they have tried other supportive methods that went very, very badly. So I know that's another problem, is that sometimes people do um, get the courage and the strength to reach out for help, because I think it's so hard to ask for help with anything, and in particular something that you may already feel some judgment or self-judgment around. And then when it doesn't go well, it can just be a huge blow. And that's very painful. So I think there's a lot of reasons why there are obstacles for receiving support. And I think stigma is one of them, but I think it's a bunch of things.
Without identifying anyone in particular, can you give an example of how counseling or support has gone wrong?
Ooh, yeah.
One, 10, I don't know.
Well, listen, I mean, first of all, there are great, I love therapists. Oh my gosh, my therapist, I adore my therapist. A lot of my closest friends are therapists. So I love therapists. So there's no knock on therapists or other kinds of counselors, professionals. I mean, look, there are people who are less well trained for this and less supportive of helping people with this loss than others. But just like in any profession, you got some bad therapists out there, some bad grief counselors out there. So I have had numerous people come to me who felt very dismissed by their provider. For example, I've heard this story. I'm not probably over 25 times. I went to meet with a therapist and they said, I know you're here about your dog, but this is probably really about your mom and dad and how you grew up. So can we talk about your childhood? In session one. And if I mean, really, truly, I've heard this story dozens of times or some version of it. But listen, in defense of therapists, first of all, a lot therapists are trained in family dynamics. They're trained in family systems. Like that is a mode that they're all in, right? In fact, therapists aren't required to take any coursework in grief. Grief is sometimes an elective, some places, but like you may not have even had any training in grief as a therapist, which is, so you think of everything like, okay, well, this got to be about mom and dad, right? So I understand why that's where some therapists are coming from. And look, is it true that sometimes our relationship with our beloved is influenced by our families of origin and things that happened in our childhood with attachment and how our self-esteem? Of course, that stuff all plays a factor, but we don't start there. We can't start there because yes, it is about your dog. It is about your cat. It is about your horse. It's about your relationship and what you are experiencing, feeling like you've lost them forever. So we must start with that, and we must center the relationship between the two of you throughout your entire work. And that is just not how a lot of providers just see things, right? So it's not totally their fault, but that's a very common story. And then there's other bad things. I mean, there are things that happen, with communicators, animal communicators, that can be very damaging for people. And that's a place where a lot of people go for support. And I am not saying that every animal communicator is damaging. I'm not saying that that's a thing that doesn't feel comforting for many people. It does. But if you're asking me about things that people do to go for support and they don't get good support, that can be a place where a lot of damage can be done. And I've had a lot of people come to me feeling very damaged after that experience. I've had other people come to me whose providers have said, and I really appreciate this, they have said, I think you should get a specialist to help you with your grief about your beloved, because it is kind of beyond my scope, and I think that would benefit you. And I really appreciate when providers say that, because this is such a niche thing. It's such a specialty thing. And there's very few people who do this full time, only devoted to just this type of grief and loss. And so just like if you have a very rare heart condition or you have a really weird thing with your eye, like I do, then you got to go to a specialist, right? Because I don't want to go to the ankle doctor for my heart problem. So I really do appreciate when providers say, hey, get to a specialist. Then, of course, you got people who go to groups, and groups are very hard to facilitate. You have to be very skilled to facilitate a group. And groups that are not well facilitated can be really sticky for people. They can be triggering. There can be all kinds of dynamics that happen in groups that are rough. And many pet loss groups they're kind of drop in, drop out kind of groups, and there's not a lot of consistency. I do work with people in small groups. I offer small cohort group support as one of my offerings because that provides a consistency, same people every week, building safety. But a lot of people, if they just kind of show up at a group and it's kind of like a one-time thing, they can feel unheard or misunderstood or talked over. I don't know. So there's just a lot of ways things go wrong, and it's nobody's fault necessarily. But I think that is one of the biggest barriers I see for reaching out for help. Because if you reach out for help and it doesn't go well, it makes you much less likely to reach back.
What are some of the misconceptions about the work you do that you may have heard from people who might think, oh, I would never do that?
Well, I mean, the truth is, most coming to me are desperate. They're hurting. Um, they often, a lot of people come to me at the very beginning when it's just happened and it's so raw and they're so in shock and they're not sure how I can help them. They don't know what they need, but they know that they feel like this is something they're going to have trouble surviving. And that's how I felt, in my experience. And so, for those people, they often are like, I don't know what I need. And then I can tell them, well, I don't either because this just happened and I don't know what's going to come up for you, but I can tell you some of the things that often come up for people. And if these things come up, these are the types of things we might, work on together. Um, and then there's people who kind of, experienced the death and it's now been maybe 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And they think, I thought I'd be doing a lot better than I'm doing now. I thought I'd be, quote, over it. Pardon me. I thought I'd be feeling much more myself. And for those people, they already have a lot of judgment on themselves because they're not where they were expecting to be. And that is oftentimes where I say things like, many people in the beginning, it's kind of like a frozen popsicle syndrome, like not much coming in, not much coming out.
Mm.
And after a certain amount of time, and it's different for everyone, it doesn't happen to everyone, but for a lot of people, like 1 month, 2 months, they feel this big kind of thaw feeling. And then it's like
Mm.
a lot of big feelings coming in and really intensity of longing and sadness or anger or guilt or, just irritation and discombobulation. And so for those people, they're like, I'm getting worse, not better, but I'm not sure anything can help me. And so, then that's kind of a different conversation. It's like, well, kind of here's, are you experiencing this? Are you experiencing this? Here's how we support this. And then there's people where it's been like a long time. It might have been years, more than 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years even. And for some of those people, their kind of grieving got interrupted in some way, or they weren't able to really express, and they've been stuffing it down or bottling it up, and it's coming out sideways. And for those people, you have to really reassure them that, hey, even though it's been a while, there's a lot we can do to support this and help make your day to day so much, easier. So I think kind of the people that are coming to me don't have the objection of like, why would I do this? They're coming because they need help. The why would I do this is sometimes, partners, parents, external people. But
Mm.
the people that are coming to me are usually their objections are kind of more within themselves, not sure, like, can I be helped? That's the big question for most of my people. Can anyone help this?
How do you create a non-judgmental and safe environment for people seeking pet loss counseling, especially those who may not feel entirely comfortable with the idea that they need help?
Well, a lot of that happens for the people who come to me. Many of them have been referred to me from a veterinarian or a vet med professional or through word of mouth. So they already know I have that capability. But many people also come to me because they saw me on Instagram and they've seen my videos. I make a lot of videos where I talk about topics in pet loss, and I make a lot of videos where I'm addressing different feelings that come up and with a lot of practical, concrete tools for how to support yourself. And many people who call me say, I wanted to reach out to you because I know that you get it. I've watched enough of your videos and read your posts and your captions to know that you get it. So before I even talk to people, I think many people feel very safe with me because they have read my story. They've heard me talk about my grief, my losses. And the way I talk about it is like someone who talks about it like they've been there. And with this type of grief and loss, for many people, that feels really important because they want to know that I know what it's like to have your soulmate pet die. And they also know that I survived it and that I have a beautiful, loving relationship with him now. And they want that. So they feel safe coming to me to say things like, my soulmate pet has died and I don't know how I'll survive it because they know I've been there. So I think the safety begins for a lot of people, like before they ever come, because they know me and they know my story. But, how do I remain non-judgmental? It's because I'm not judgmental about it. I have no judgment about this at all. I have tremendous compassion and empathy for the suffering that we experience in this type of loss. It is so lonely. It is so isolating. It is so terrifying on both anticipatory or post loss to be facing these huge emotions, to have our emotional anchor or rock not by our side to help us get through it the way they've helped us get through everything, to feel like all these different chapters of our lives that our beloved has spent with us are closing with this loss, and to be completely oppressed by guilt and regret and feeling like I failed or did something wrong. That is so hard. And I have no judgment around any of it. I have total empathy and compassion. People who are experiencing, like flashbacks about the last day or what could have been different, or they're remembering a sound that is keeping them up at night. Is there anything harder to go through? I mean, it's just the worst. So I don't have any judgment because I know how hard it is, and I have complete empathy. And I think people get that when they talk to me. Everyone always apologizes in sessions. I'm so sorry, I'm crying. And I say, it's okay. It's okay. I might cry too. And sometimes I do
Yeah.
because I am so moved and I care about my clients and I care that they're going through this. And sometimes they don't have a lot of other people in their life who really care and they know that I do. But the reason it doesn't keep me up at night and the reason that I can keep going and serving as many people as I do is because I also know that working together, they're going to get strategies, they're going to get tools, they're going to get immediate things that help support their brain and heart and spirit. And they're going to learn how to dial down that guilt. They're going to learn how to make peace with that last day. They're going to learn how to step into their life now and this identity now, and they're going to figure out what this crossroads is for them. Like, I know where they're going to end up, and I know that they're going to end up in deep connection with their beloved, and that they are going to be using a royal we when they talk about, their beloved. And so, because I can see, because I have a lot of confidence that that's where we're going to go, I have so much hope. I find this work very life affirming because I know what their lives are going to become and how the gifts and guidance and lessons and teachings of their beloved are going to influence them and impact the world. And I know where they can go. So for me, it's beautiful. Even in the worst of the worst with people, I just always hold on to, I know where you can go and it's gonna be all right. And I know that even when they don't. And that keeps me from, you know, getting into my own head about it too much because I hear a lot of hard stories.
You alluded to it a few minutes ago when you said that a lot of the people you work with don't have a big support network. Um, and that strikes at the very point of disenfranchised grief in that a lot of the people in our lives don't necessarily understand the profundity of the relationship that we've had with our beloved, which is at the root, I think, of why we feel shame about needing to approach someone like you. What strategies do you give to your clients when they need to encounter those people in their lives? And I know we've talked about that before.
Yeah. Well, first of all, one of the things I give every client who works with me is community. Because I learned a long time ago when I was doing this that because we're so isolated, because the people in our regular day-to-day lives are going to have a hard time with our grief because of their own stuff, that my clients aren't going to get the support they need. So anybody who works with me, whether they're working with me individually or in a small cohort group, gets access to a completely private community just for people I work with that has all kinds of things happening there just for those people. So we have, forums, and I have special events, and I bring in guest speakers, and I do private office hours on there. And my clients get to know each other and they make friends. In fact, a lot of them have made real life friends. I have people traveling all over the country to see each other and visit each other. And
Yeah.
and so, like my Instagram is awesome. It's beautiful. It's huge. And it is a community too, but it's completely unsafe because Instagram is an unsafe place. And I can't moderate it all. But this, I have a heavily moderated, like very private way for people to build genuine, deep connection with other people who get it. And when my clients wake up at 3 a.m. feeling completely alone, they can go, talk to other people in my community, and they'll have 20 responses by morning of affirmation and love and support. So, one thing I do is I give a community because we cannot do it alone. And the kind of community where we're all in it together, we're all speaking the same language, we all have the same goals, we all understand is absolutely a game changer for everybody I work with. So that's one thing I do as an immediate thing so you feel less alone. But in terms of strategies for dealing with people in your life, I mean, one of the things that I teach people is that you, as best you can, to stick up for yourself, be assertive, ask for what you need, let people know when something they're doing doesn't feel supportive, and spend time with yourself figuring out, what do I need from people around me? What do I want from people around me? And a lot of people I work with aren't very good at asking for what they need or want in general. So we spend time on that. And what can you do to help the people around you help you? Because, we've talked about this before, Angela, like sometimes people do want to help you and they don't know what to do. And then other times people are going to say, boneheaded things. So I think for empowering someone to get what they need from their community, we have to work on learning how to ask for it. So that's the thing we spend a lot of time on. And also just knowing, when to create some distance with people. Like we've talked about this. Like sometimes people aren't all bad in your life, but they're just not going to be able to handle this very well. And so if it's someone you want to keep in your life, let's figure out how to keep them in your life, but maybe just have a little distance, at least while you're in the like very acute moments of your grief. Because there's
Mhm.
nothing, more shattering than trying to share with someone who can't receive it.
Yeah. Have you encountered any clients who expressed that family and friends discouraged them from approaching you?
It's a good question. I certainly have had a lot of family and friends be like, is it working? How's it going? How much longer are you going to need to be doing that? I have quite a few clients whose family and friends are always checking in, like, are you getting anywhere? Definitely had a lot of that. Let me think about discouraging me. Um, yeah, there's been some partners, some spouses, I think, who think that perhaps their spouse quote should
Good.
be able to do it on their own. And I have worked with certain populations where there is I would call it cultural stigma
Hmm.
about seeking help. I have a lot of people come to me that say my family's very anti counseling, very anti therapy, very anti 12 step, all that kind of thing. And I am the first person to ever seek this kind of support. And my family thinks it should be my private business. And I have had people express that kind of culturally for them that it's a real step out of the box. But I don't know that we've had a lot of active discouragement that I can think of, or at least I haven't been told about it so much. But a lot of sort of like, when's it going to get better kind of questions,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is tough.
Yeah. I had a bit of a breakdown back in the mid 2000s, and nothing to do with pet loss or anything, but um, I told my mom that I was in therapy, and she said to me, "Well, can't you just work it out on your own?" And I said, "Well, no, and that's why I'm in therapy." And then she said, and then she said, "Well, maybe I need to be in therapy." And I was like, "Oh, well,
Yes.
there's a road I'm not gonna go down." I don't
Hey,
need that discussion today.
whatever it takes. Well,
But yeah, you should.
Well, listen, about this in particular, I mean, first of all, like the work I do, this is considered very short-term work from sort of a therapeutic standpoint, right? Like, I'm not a therapist, I'm a certified grief counselor, but like, I like to set the expectation. We're not going to be doing this for years and years. If we do that, I'm a crappy grief counselor for starters. This is short-term interventional kind of work. Most people work with me between like 3 to 6 months, and they're feeling a lot better. And does it mean your grief is over in 3 to 6 months? No, absolutely not. But you have so many more tools and strategies and tips of how to carry it and what to do when things get tough. And you have community that I have, helped you find of people you can check in with and talk things through with. And, but there are certain aspects of this that are very hard to do alone. The guilt piece of this that people experience is virtually impossible to work through alone. And you need someone who knows how to help support that kind of guilt if you want to really dial it down and not be beating yourself up for the next 20 years. The a lot of the stuff about the ending or the anticipatory, the caregiving period, that stuff is very hard to process alone with someone who really doesn't know how to handle that. And that's a really tough piece. And the identity piece is really tough to kind of work through on your own. And then of course the whole, continuing your relationship with your beloved, because that's a new idea for most people. They have no idea where to begin on that. And so, like there's certain parts of this where it's like, I don't know how anyone would do it alone, right? Like you really need help on a lot of this stuff. And so people who are like, I don't know if anyone needs help with this, they're not thinking about some of the pieces that like are virtually impossible, I think, to navigate without someone really experienced by your side.
Yeah. How do you combat the idea that seeking help is a sign of weakness?
Who taught you that? And how do you know it's true?
Ah, society in general, I suppose. Mom, our
Okay. Is it true?
parents.
Is it true?
Well, I don't think so, but not anymore, not for me.
Well, then,
Um,
then if you don't think so, then
but
that's a faulty claim. No, that is how I combat it. I mean, if
right.
someone says
Okay,
I
gotcha.
feel weak, yeah, if I feel weak because that wasn't that no, that's how I combat it. If someone's like, I feel weak because I need help or I want help, okay, who taught you that?
Sure.
And is it true? Those are two very powerful questions for any thought we have that
Mm,
because very often, I shouldn't, there's should again, right? I shouldn't need help with this.
right.
Who taught you that? I mean, where does that come from? See, we walk around with a lot of assumptions about who we should be and how we should be and what we should be. I mean, it's the shoulds, right? It's all should stuff. And we rarely examine, well, where is that actually coming from? Do I know someone that was going through a tough thing and they sought counseling for it? And I thought, man, they were weak sauce. Why did they need to do that? Have you ever thought that about anyone in your life? No. Okay,
Well,
your mom taught you that. How's that working out for your mom? How's it working out for all the stuff that she maybe could have benefited from getting some support around and didn't? I mean, is it,
well, and how the hell are we supposed to know how to deal with this stuff ourselves when we didn't take a class on it in school?
not only do we not take a class on it in school, in many families, in my family, someone died, we had a funeral, we put him in the ground, everyone cried for a day, we never talked about it again. And that's hundreds of us, hundreds of thousands of us, as many people I talk to. We don't have any models for grief. We don't have any models for mourning. I do an exercise with my clients about, who are your grief role models? Who have you seen grieve and mourn? Mourning. We don't know anything about mourning, let alone grief. Mourning? What's that? So we don't have any models for any of this. And so frankly, we don't have any models for like getting help or not getting help. So if anyone, has that thing like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, okay, where'd you learn that? And is it true? Because a lot
Hmm.
of times we just have these preconceived things about grief or about support. But the other thing is like, if you are not ready to step into this kind of work, I don't advise it
Hmm.
because I want to work with people who are really motivated, who are going to do all their homework, because I give a lot of homework, that are going to, come to every session, ready, and who are really, ready to step up on behalf of themselves, even if they're scared. And I really want people who don't feel weak for doing it. And so I'm happy to talk to them about that if that's really a thing that they're, feeling. But at the end of the day, it's like you may not be ready, and that's okay. Not everybody's ready to do deep grief work. It's hard. It's hard. And so I also just like to always say, like, it isn't for everybody. And if you're not ready, it's okay. You might be ready in 6 months. In fact, I have that happen sometimes. I talk to people and they circle back, 6 months later and say, I was so overwhelmed. I just couldn't even imagine like doing any of the things you were saying. And then they come back and they're like, I feel, more ready now. Great. You know,
Do you
so I
feel
think it's,
there's a, sorry, go ahead.
no, I think it's important to also just listen, to whatever, if you are like nervous or you don't feel ready and I will talk with you about it, but I'm not going to like talk you into it because
Hmm.
everyone's at their own pace. Everyone's on their own timeline. And I think it's, we got to be gentle about like, as much as I believe everybody can benefit from this type of work, I wish everybody could do this type of work. I also know and have experience, when people aren't quite ready, like it's not good. So, I want people to listen to their hearts too.
What do I look like after 6 months of working with you?
I
Am I skinnier? Am I hotter?
was
No.
gonna say, um, what do you look like? I think I care more about what you feel like. But
Sure.
my wish for you is that you feel when you think about your beloved, that you feel warm and connected and grateful and smiling, as opposed to be feeling overwhelmed by horrible memories and sadness and sorrow. I wish for you that when you think of some of the things that maybe you have some regrets about, some things you wish had been different, that they feel a little bit more like a little ping, almost like a mosquito bite instead of a scorpion sting.
Mm.
I hope that you think about your beloved's life and their continued gifts as opposed to their last day. I hope that you are in ongoing collaboration with your beloved and that you feel like you two are still doing your thing, whatever your thing is. I hope you're able to help others when they encounter this kind of grief and
Mm.
that that's meaningful to your life. And I hope that you are way more self-compassionate with the way you treat yourself, think about yourself, and talk to yourself, and that has extended into all aspects of your life. And I hope that whatever this sort of new normal is that you will be living, because you are no longer the same person
Mhm.
that you were when your beloved died, I hope that you are finding meaning and purpose and joy in your life right now, right here, right now.
And am
So I
I
hope.
maybe more empowered to advocate for myself among people who may not understand the profundity of my loss?
Well, certainly, yeah. I mean, yeah, I spend a lot of time working on boundaries with people. So yes, better boundaries, but really, that's part of self-compassion. Part of being kinder to yourself, and that's in the self-compassion piece I mentioned, that part of being kinder to yourself on all fronts is not laying down and letting people walk on you.
What is one last piece of advice you might have for someone listening and thinking, I don't know if I could do that?
Well, one piece of advice I would say is give me a call because we can talk about it and we can figure out if it's something you feel like you can do. Nobody really knows what this work is like. They don't know what we do, what we talk about, the kinds of things that go on. So I always say to anyone, if you're unsure, call me. We'll talk about it. I'm happy to tell you what the work is like. I want to hear your story. I want to hear what's happened and what you're experiencing. And I want to make sure I feel like I can help you. And if I feel like I can help you, I'll tell you exactly how. So it's one thing I would say, reach out. But on a bigger note of sort of, I don't know if this is worthy of getting help or if I, quote, should need help. This type of pain that you are experiencing is profound, it's real, and it's difficult to move through. It's difficult to survive. This is one of the most intense losses that anyone will ever experience. And whether or not you know anyone that's suffered a loss like this and come out the other side, and or whether you don't know anyone that has ever felt this way about a beloved before, you are not alone in how you feel. And so even if it seems like no one will understand, or you're the weird one, or you're being over dramatic, whatever messages you may have received, that none of that is true. What is true is that you are hurting and your loss is real and profound. And there are people who would love to help you through. That's what I'd say.
Where do we find you, Beth Bigler?
Oh, you can find me on Instagram at Honoring Our Animals, or on my website at honoringouranimals.com.
Society often minimizes the human-animal bond. Making people feel their intense grief is an overreaction. We end up with feelings that we should be able to cope alone and get through it without professional support. We judge ourselves for wanting to find the support, and then when we look for support, we might not find someone who knows how to specialize in our experience. There are a lot of therapists and counselors out there who lack the training to help us process the loss of our pets. We risk feeling dismissed, and we give up quickly on seeking help. Unless we find someone like Beth instead. Someone with an intimate understanding of what it's like to lose a precious babe. Because she has. I love the way she sees a future for everyone living with pet loss grief, one with hope, compassion, and connection. Thanks for joining us at the Companions Collective. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with a friend or two. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you could leave us a review or rating on your podcast platform. Until next week, tell your dog I said hi.